And now this brings us to probably the 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to top-down shooters. And that is, we have to remove the ceiling and we have to deal with the near wall. But these issues are 50% technical, but there's also an art element to them. And it can make the difference between a level where it feels like you're running around through a rat maze and one that feels like you're part of a real world. How you treat what I call the near wall, or the fourth wall, and the ceiling, or the sixth wall. That fourth and sixth wall, the near wall and the ceiling. So if I take this marine character, move him like this, let's say he's running along here, you can see the wall here obstructs the player's view. If it was a first-person shooter, that's no issue. Anyway, top down, that's an issue. So there's a couple ways of dealing with this. Here's one way. One way is you create this artificial bevel. Now, it works, but to my thinking, it's kind of cheap-ass. It's kind of, you look down and you see this, and it kind of makes you feel like that's the game designer. The game designer has made the walls deliberately. Well, another way of dealing with the fourth wall that's related to this is, and that is, you can take a brush like that, cover it in player clip, just like that. It's kind of so that just is an invisible way of forcing the player. Well, that's a little bit like this. It's kind of, in fact, it's probably even worse than doing it like this, because it's going to be weird. Your player is going to be like, what the hell? I can't run. Anyway, I should mention that another valid way is to simply remove the wall. If you turn it into a funk brush, like a normal wall, turn it into a funk brush, you can give it a texture mode and like give it a texture of, say, 125 or 75. That makes it transparent partially. The only thing is that's adding another entity to your level, and that can be also an issue if players are supposed to, run in front of such a wall and it's transparent. It just kind of looks weird, Another way is to simply put a prop in the view. That feels a little bit, it seems a bit more plausible, like there's this big pipe there. So the player has to run along this area. Same basic dimensions. Just seems to justify it a bit more. But there's another way I want to suggest. Just take this wall, turn it into a trigger. First we have to give it the trigger texture, and then we'll do a trigger multiple. Now put that aside for a second. Take this guy here, clipping tool, chop him, select the top, brush, turn that into a funk brush. Okay, call him sewer wall, top. Give him a render mode of texture, so he's at 255. Now, you apply that. Go to this guy. He's a trigger one, so he's going to be sewer wall trig. Delay before reset is 1. Output. Add on start touch. This is that guy. Alpha. We'll put alpha at 75. Apply. Copy paste. On end touch all. Alpha 255. So what I've done is this. So if a player is running around in this trigger here, that part of the wall will fade to 50%. There it is. Normally it would block the view, but this time we'll fade it out. Okay, so now we come to the topic of the sixth wall, or the ceiling. And this is something that players, or level designers, some level designers don't pay too much attention to, and they should. They need to pay attention to it. You have to make a decision, a simple decision. Is this environment, does it have a hard ceiling or not? If it doesn't have a ceiling, then basically what this is a big open room with some low walls. And if that's the case, then I would decorate the tops of these walls. You'll notice that I've left no draw on them, which, as you know, is an invisible texture, except that it does cast a shadow. So we'll do that. Now, if you're lazy as a designer and you just say slap walls in and just give them, you don't bother paying too much attention to materials, and you create an environment like that, you've gone ahead and made an environment that is a big chamber. And if you intended it not to be that way, well, you're confusing the message. You're confusing your depiction of the environment. If I made an environment like this with these low walls here, to give a sense that this is a big chamber, don't have to, well, first of all, the side walls I would lift. But another thing that I would do is I probably would take some slabs of no draw, some pieces, throw them in here, or block light. Here, I'll do that right now. You could do something like this. Here, let's paper this guy. Okay. You can use no draw, or you can use the block light texture. And I maybe do something like this, and whatever, right? I'd create some kind of a, in film, this is what's called a cookie. If you do film lighting, it's basically something which you put up in front of the light to cast shadows, to give a sense. So, and I might put up a light here from this point of view looking down, and that would cast a bunch of shadows, and it would give a sense of this larger space over top. But that's not what I want this space to be. I want this space to be a sewer environment. And because of that, I don't want that. So, if that's the case, what do we do? Well, obviously we do, and you've seen it many times, is you paper all the tops with black. And that tells the player that there is a ceiling above me. It's just that it's been removed for the purposes of gameplay. If it was a first-person shooter, inside it would look, something like that, right? It would be like, but of course we can't do that because you've got to be able to see the action. Now, that's a high concept, and it's something which, if you've done this, my next message is you have to respect the ceiling, and there's a couple things. Some level designers forget this. They forget that there's a ceiling above here. So they treat world that they've built as a kind of rat maze. And so you've got players, this guy here can fire a grenade launcher over the top of this wall here. And as soon as you do that, you're breaking the ceiling, you're breaking the sixth wall. The traditional term is breaking the fourth wall, but it means the same thing. Basically, when you break the fourth wall, break the ceiling, you're breaking suspension of disbelief, and your level is less believable. One thing about grenade launchers, because they have a high arc of fire, to make, what I do is I'll clip these ceilings. Basically, put a nice big ceiling thing here. I'll clip it with, actually not clip, but block. This here, block bullets. Put that thing there. And the player, can see through that. But any grenade launcher shell will hit. It'll fly up here and it'll go bang into there. I could, in a low ceiling environment like this, I could just slap, block bullets across the entire ceiling. The only thing, this is a compromise, the only thing I find though is that renders the grenade launcher ineffective, because if you're here and if this Marine goes to shoot this grenade launcher, the grenade is going to go up and bang, it's going to hit the ceiling, it's going to explode right here. So to compensate for that, and this is a bit of a cheat, I do artificially lift the ceiling. Like I would put, I'd put walls like this all around. Anyway, so that's another issue. And then I would put this stuff into my ceiling of this group, so it's not in my face while I'm designing a level. And another no-no is to spawn aliens on top of these black surfaces and have the aliens jump down. That too, that has the same effect. When you do that, it's cheating, it's frustrating. Like, for example, if you have two players and they decide they're going to seal off this corner while they heal up or something like that, if you've got aliens who are dropping down from this black space, it tells the player what's the point, What's the point of making a good tactical decision of covering this corner if the aliens can just come from this invisible ceiling space, So that's another thing you don't want to do. That said, sometimes you do want to spawn aliens from above, but you want to do it in a way that there's harmony with the ceiling. For example, in Mission 1 of Reduction, I did have aliens coming out of the ceiling, but I justified it. I would spawn a panel prop that would fall flying to the ground, would drop to the ground. Then I'd have the aliens come out of the ceiling, and that works better because, first of all, the aliens aren't just coming out of this space. They are still coming down into the hallway, so the players are still covering the area, but it enables me to spawn them in a position that might be more challenging, that sort of thing. So respect the ceiling.